Hey, everybody, welcome back to the GOAZCATS.com football preview show. We're back with another episode. You guys have been hitting us up with a lot of views. The comments have been getting a little wild, but we like it. We appreciate you all watching. This is GOAZCATS.com senior editor Matt Moreno, joined by staff writer Troy Hutchison. And we're back to talk some more Arizona football. Obviously, now transitioning to Pac-12 play, 9 games left in the regular season, and now it gets a little bed more exciting. Obviously, Arizona last week was able to take care of North Dakota State, maybe surprising some people on North Dakota State side. Jedd Fisch, very excited. We'll leave it at that after the game. For those who didn't watch it on TV or did watch it on TV, they know. But obviously, I think Arizona felt very slighted by that game, it felt like, and at least the lead up to that game. We were on this show last week saying that, I mean, at least I know it kind of got this point across that it felt like Arizona shouldn't be playing that game. You just lost to NAU the year before. Now you're playing, arguably I don't even think it's arguably, it's the best team of the last decade at the FCS level. Just felt like Arizona shouldn't be in position to play that game, but it was on the schedule. They played it and they won. Pulled out a win there at the end. Never really felt like Arizona was necessarily going to lose that game. It didn't ever feel like they were out of it. Didn't even really feel like they were in danger, really. Really stayed calm. Stayed confident, had a bounce back performance from Jayden de Laura. Had some really nice performances all across the board. A very unique style North Dakota State brought to the field. As we mentioned, it's something that Arizona's probably not going to see at all the rest of the season. I guess unless they make a bowl game, and we'll see who they get matched up against. But really unique style, and they kind of rose up to the occasion, passed that test, and now they're on to Pac-12 play. Before we get on to this week's game against Cal, Troy, what were some of the things that really stood out to you about that game against North Dakota State? Because it really felt like after that game, Arizona came out of it feeling really confident and good about itself. Obviously doubled, its win total from last season. Not that hard to do when you only win one game, but it feels like this thing is kind of moving in the right direction, and it feels like there's some real genuine confidence for this group of players right now.
Yeah, that's a game last season where I think Arizona would have gotten blown out, to be quite frank. And number one thing that stood out to me was Jayden de Laura. We all criticized him for not running against Mississippi State. And right away from the first drive of the game, he starts to use his legs, had a 12-yard run. And in that game, he had I believe, 8-yard touchdown run as well. It kind of opened up the rest of the field for him, especially on that final drive. You saw him roll out to the right side, started to step up a little bit, and all of a sudden the linebackers and safeties collapse. Jacob Cowing's wide open in the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. So that's the number one thing is Jayden's not afraid to run, and he's a smart runner. Number two is the defense took its lumps. I mean, North Dakota State is a hard run team to face. I wouldn't say they weren't prepared for it, but, missing some bodies. I think they just didn't have enough fresh bodies at times, but they held in there. And on that final drive, kind of the drive before the final drive, North Dakota State had the ball 3rd and 2 on the Arizona 28-yard line, I believe, and they go for it after not converting the 3rd down, 4th and 2, and it's time for the defense to dig deep, and they came up with a stop, and not just a stop, they stuffed them. It wasn't even close. Got the momentum back on Arizona's sideline. Arizona went on to win the game, and then had another defensive stop, a really quick 3 and out. So I was impressed with Jayden de Laura, and 2, just the grittiness of Arizona's defense to find a way to win that game, where last season, even though Don Brown did a terrific job in his first year, I don't think they have an answer for that offense. And I think it really speaks to the coaching that Johnny Nanson and his staff have done here at Arizona. And personally, I'm a believer in their defense. I think it's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Jayden de Laura a little bit, we got a comment that was deleted on our YouTube, but they were talking about his, running. And, to me, anybody who watched that game against Mississippi State, it was like, run the ball. You're not going to really be in harm's way. I mean, there was clear openings on the field where all you have to do is run 10 yards and slide, and you'll get a first down, move the chains. But I acknowledge the kind of mental block that could be there of, hey, I just don't want to get hurt. And I think there's that thought of like, if I go down, this team isn't going to be, what it should be. And I think there's part of that. I think it's, just personal kind of, I just don't want to get hurt kind of feeling about it. But those moments were there again against North Dakota State for Arizona and for Jayden de Laura, and he took them. And he even said after the game, it opens everything up and just makes things a lot easier. And that's a difficult hurdle for a lot of players to get over. We've seen players at Arizona struggle with that, where you just don't want to run, and it derails a lot of what the offense is trying to do. And so there was nothing crazy about what he did. It wasn't like he was making outstanding Khalil Tate-like plays with his feet, but it was enough to just move the chains, keep the defense honest, and just do what needed to be done to open up the rest of the offense for Arizona. And it could be, something as simple as that really kind of flips the switch and helps Arizona, become one of, an offensive juggernaut in a lot of ways. And so, Cal knows not, hey, they have to defend that now. They have to be prepared for that. It's going to just change some, things within the offense, and that's a positive thing for Arizona. But I think you have to give kudos to Jayden de Laura for getting over that mental hurdle, because he clearly didn't want to run in that game against Mississippi State. I don't think it was like I didn't see those opportunities. I was looking down the field. I didn't even see that there was room to run. I think he noticed they were there. He just made an effort. He made a decision to not run. And on, last Saturday, he made the decision, I'm going to run the football. And it was very clear. I mean, there's moments where you're like, oh, run. And he was already on his way. You saw the opening. He was already, taking that route and, picking up yards on the ground. So I think you have to, tip your hat to him, because that's not easy for a quarterback to do. And especially an experienced one who's kind of been through the battles and says, yeah, I've had, my success doing things a different way. I'm not going to change the way I do things. And, a lot of guys are stubborn in that situation, but he wasn't, and it was to the benefit of the team. So that's a big plus for Arizona. But going back to Johnny Nanson, you're now 3 games into it. Again, not a massive sample size, but a much bigger sample size than we had, watching spring ball or watching training camp. So what's your assessment of what he's brought to Arizona as the defensive coordinator? And what do you think the biggest benefit is, or maybe a couple different things that really benefit this team by having Johnny Nanson leading this defense?
I think he's kind of brought a different mindset. With Don Brown, we saw, hey, we're trying to build something defensively. We got to work things out and get to where we want to be. Now, Johnny Nanson has a lot more depth than Don Brown did last season, but I think we're going to do this. We are going to get it done. There's a little bit, I don't want to say of an arrogance, but there's a confidence on the defensive side that we haven't seen in quite some time, maybe even dating back to the Stoops era. But the biggest thing for me is what he's doing is he's not afraid to change and adapt to the system. We've seen him run out the 4-2-5. We've seen him run out a 4-3. And then he comes up with a new style, which I don't think I've seen very much, called the junk defense, which was like a heavy dime of 5 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and 5 DBs, kind of leaving the linebacker out there on a limb, but it's stop the run and prevent big pass plays on like that 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20 situation. His adaptability, his ability to just adapt to different situations has really what's been impressive to me. And then you go out and look, they found a guy like Jacob Manu, who, was kind of overlooked out of all the Servite kids, and he's starting to play a significant role. Just the development that they've done and getting the most out of their players is really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you look at what he's done, and it's interesting because we'll just never know the answer to this, but who knows what Don Brown's defense would have looked like. They might have been making this same type of progress. I think the change in scheme adds to the turnovers. I think that's making a difference in certain areas, but it's kind of 2 different things that have kind of converged and made this a successful defense for Arizona. Kind of the right person at the right time and the right place, it feels like, for Johnny Nanson. And, you have to think, like with every new coach that comes in, once he gets his kind of players that he wants, on this roster, it'll take even another step. But even with what he has right now, which again, a lot of these players, were guys that weren't playing at their previous schools, especially the transfers. Obviously, Jerry Roberts was playing at a school, made that step up. But you look at someone like Hunter Echols, and as much as, maybe the casual fan is like, yes, this is what he should do. He came from USC. It's not always that easy. He wasn't getting a ton of time on the field at USC. A lot of the guys that were ahead of him are pros. So it's, no slight to him, but there's just not a lot of traction for him at USC. And him having the type of impact that he's having at Arizona is, I think, what every coach hopes. happens, but it doesn't always, play out that way. And, even if you're a coach, like Arizona's coaches and Jedd Fisch and Johnny Nanson and Ricky Hunley, you go, yeah, we like him. We think he can do some things. Obviously, Johnny Nanson has coached him before, so he has a better feel for him, individually and what he could be and the potential there. But it feels like you don't see it all that often where you go, that's exactly what they were looking for. When you have that transfer that comes from, let's say, a big school and goes to, Arizona, it's different than someone like Jerry Roberts, who was, excelling, at his previous school, but it was a smaller school. That's kind of the natural jump as you go, oh, he was already producing. He was fine. He's just doing it on a bigger stage. But when you have a player who's coming from a bigger school that was maybe having a little bit of struggles and not having the type of career that he wanted, you never know. And so I think, again, you have to credit, like we credit Jayden de Laura, I think you have to credit Hunter Echols, because I knew what he was as a high school player. I saw him, obviously at USC during times, and he made some plays against Arizona when they played them. But I think this is everything that Arizona could have hoped for from a player like that. And he's really become a leader for this team. He's really making an impact. And, I think just all the pieces seem to really fit for Johnny Nanson and what he wants to do defensively. And it's a positive thing because, again, you're kind of, I feel like they haven't hit their stride yet. It still feels like a newer defense and they're still filling things out, but they're also making plays and having progress, and you're seeing real results, even though it doesn't feel like everything is completely locked in yet. And that's a good sign for Arizona. But, looking back at that game against North Dakota State, maybe we'll kind of wrap up with this on that topic. Were there any players that maybe stood out to you that you said, okay, they've caught something? I know there was a couple big performances. PFF came out with their grades, and a couple of them have shifted around, but there are some big grades in there for a few players, especially some younger players. One guy who got his first start defensively. But were there any players that maybe stood out to you that you said, this is the beginning of something? This feels like this, these things have fallen into place for this guy that, you're really going to see, him excel as they move to Pac-12 play.
Yeah, I think one of the top guys is Jonah Coleman. We saw him kind of break out near the end of the game. And, he started to break off some big runs and got his first career touchdown. So only 32 yards on the game. But I think it's a performance that could lead to bigger, better things for him in the long run. And then on the defensive side of the football, I think we talked about it. Hunter Echols we knew who he was, possibly going to be at Arizona. He's become that leader on the defensive line that Arizona's had in the past, but not to this level in terms of getting to the quarterback when they need a big play. He's the guy that'll go out and get it done.
I lied. I want to talk some more about this last game, but were there any things, kind of on a similar note, were there any things that you said, oh, this finally clicked, or this looked right, that you go, this is something that they maybe have unlocked for, the start of Pac-12 play? Obviously, you open it, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but you don't open it in the strongest way. I'll put it that way. Yeah. You're not playing Oregon and USC to open Pac-12 play. You're playing Cal and Colorado. To have those as your first couple of Pac-12 games, feeling confident after non-conference play, coming in 2-1, what do you feel like are a couple of things maybe they've unlocked either the first few weeks or unlocked in this last game that you go, that's the thing that's really going to, potentially carry them as they move, ahead in the conference schedule?
Yeah, I think offensive line play was critical against North Dakota State. They started to step it up in the second half of that game and create kind of holes for the running backs to run. Because after that Mississippi State game where they averaged, I think it was 2 yards a carry, and quite frankly got punked on the offensive line, you're starting to worry like, ooh, is this going to be concerned? But North Dakota State's a very good defensive line, very good front seven, and they were able to really insert their dominance in that second half of the game. So I think that's huge. And then number two is going back to the line, Josh Baker. He had all those bad snaps against Mississippi State, and it's like, wow, this could be a huge problem for Arizona moving forward. The second play of the game against North Dakota State, you saw the dribbler go behind Jayden de Laura, and you're like, okay, here we go again. And then that was it. Brandon Carroll said he didn't have a conversation. It was just he knows what he needs to do, and he got it done. But something clicked after that moment. I don't know if it was the embarrassment of it, but there wasn't another bad snap the rest of the way, and I think that's huge for Arizona.
All right, so we'll switch gears. Moving ahead to Pac-12 play, the start of Pac-12 play. You have Cal coming up. It was interesting. You look back at last week. Neither Arizona nor Cal was expected to win their game. Cal obviously went into Notre Dame, went into South Bend, that crazy stadium. Big atmosphere, a team that was really, really, really looking for a win in Notre Dame. People were like starting to try and think about like, okay, what happens to Marcus Freeman if they lose this game and they start the season 0-3? That was kind of how dire it was for Notre Dame. Cal goes in there as the underdog. You're looking down at the score, taking a peek at the game. You go, oh, they're still in this thing. Oh, they're like really in this thing. And then there was a couple interesting calls. It's going to happen, I think, when you're playing a team like Notre Dame and they really need a win. I'm never one to say that, the refs cost them anything because they didn't. But there were a couple interesting calls. There was a kind of a phantom offside penalty that was called that you just kind of a head scratcher there. But in the end, Cal had a chance to at least tie the game. With the Hail Mary, would have been interesting. Hail Mary at Notre Dame, but to send them 0-3. But it was an interesting, kind of finish. Cal was very, very disappointed after that game. Jack Plummer, Will Plummer's brother, is the quarterback for Cal. Listening to him after the game, he sounded very frustrated by kind of his own play, but also that they just couldn't really finish and, put the finishing touches on that win, because I think they all knew how important that game was and how important that win could have been for them. On the opposite side, you have a team that was kind of getting not bashed. I think people were giving Arizona credit, but we talked about it. It felt like a no-win situation for Arizona last week going up against North Dakota State. When the spread finally came out, Arizona went into that game at home against an FCS team as an underdog. Not a lot of people were expecting them to win. I know I tweeted it out or retweeted it out at GOAZCATS. ESPN Game Day, only Lee Corso picked Arizona to win that game. There is kind of this feeling of like being disrespected on Arizona's side. As you mentioned, though, that's typically one of those scenarios where, last few years, you could see Arizona very easily losing that game and kind of easily being blown out. But the contrary happens. They ended up winning that game that people didn't think they were going to win. So you have kind of two different mentalities coming into this week. And that's really something that I've really kind of thought about this week and have looked at. You don't really have a clear read for it. I think we'll have a better idea once Saturday comes around, Saturday afternoon in Berkeley. But my thing would be, do you see Cal having a hangover effect, which feels like the more likely scenario from a game like Notre Dame, where you're still thinking about, man, if only that Hail Mary that gets dropped at the end falls and you get into the end zone and you go for two, or you just kick the extra point, you go into overtime, or a couple of things go differently, you win that game, the trajectory of your season really changes. Where if you're Arizona, I think the only kind of fear would be that you're so confident because you beat North Dakota State that, hey, you're still going to end up playing a lot of Power 5 teams the rest of the way, 9 of them, Pac-12 teams, the rest of the season. You can't get overly confident, sit, so much on that win over North Dakota State because there's more games to be played. So where do you stand on just kind of the mentalities of both of these teams and how much does that play into what happens on Saturday, if at all?
Yeah, I think for Cal, I even looked at it. I was like, they haven't been that good this year. They had that game against Notre Dame where they should have won it. They're 2-1. I know it's all like, oh man, we should have won that game, but you're still 2-1. You have a winning record. It's looking good right now for you. You've had your struggles along the way, but you're above 500. For Arizona, yeah, there's a confidence out there that we haven't seen in quite some time. Players were very blunt that, they felt disrespected by media nationally. They felt disrespected by North Dakota State during the game with some cheap shots and stuff like that. Dorian Singer said it right after the press conference, and they went out there and wanted to take care of business, and they did. So I think there's a little bit of confidence for Arizona, but I don't think it's a overconfidence, not a cockiness. It's a confidence that we know we're better than what people think, and this is why. Which I think is huge for Arizona to have that type of confidence that, again, they haven't had in quite some time. So it's two different things going on here. And yeah, I could see a hangover effect for Cal.
So talk to us a little bit about Cal, what you've seen from them. Obviously, we're paying a lot more attention to Arizona, but I've kept an eye on Cal. I know you have as well a little bit. They have some, really intriguing pieces. They have some talented players on their team. Obviously mentioned Jack Plummer, the quarterback, didn't have the most amazing game against Notre Dame, but he has experience on his side. He obviously was at Purdue before, finishing up his career at Cal. Has the talent to get some things done. Jaden Ott is a really, really impressive young freshman running back who's done some good things. Won back-to-back Pac-12 Freshman Player of the Week the first 2 weeks of the season. Just a really impressive player. And then they have some other pieces defensively. Daniel Scott is somebody who's on the back end is a really talented player. What do you make of this team? I know we've talked about it a little bit already, but what do you make of this team? And what do you see as kind of some of the things that Arizona is going to have to pay attention to as they get ready to face the Bears this Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's a team that's still trying to kind of find its offensive identity. Jaden Ott's been phenomenal, back-to-back Freshman of the Week awards for the running back. But you look at it, only averaging 117 yards on the ground as a unit, as a team this season. And then Jake Plummer, Jack Plummer, not Jake Plummer, my bad. Jack Plummer, he's still kind of trying to find his way in this offense, coming over from Purdue where he had success there before. I believe he averaged a little over 250 yards passing per game over there. So he's trying to fill out his way and learn his line, who has some holes at times, but I do think they have some nice offensive pieces. It's just a jumbled mess right now offensively, and they're still trying to figure out their identity and what they want to do. Defensively, we know what Cal's about. They have a good front seven, a very good secondary. They're not going to let you run the ball on them, and they're going to make you beat them through there and hope that they get turnovers. So I think this is a defensive-minded team that is still trying to figure out what they are offensively.
I think they would love to play a high-scoring game. We saw that a few years ago in that game when Colin Schooler made that big play to help Arizona end up winning that game. I think might have been the last time they played in Berkeley. I'd have to double check that, but it's we'll talk about this later, but they play a lot of close games. But I think Cal would love to have a high scoring game. I just don't think it's kind of in their DNA right now. I think, as you mentioned, they're trying to run a West Coast type of offense, another similar to Arizona pro style scheme in a lot of ways. I don't know that they have all the pieces to do that right now, but defense is kind of what they're about. It's what they do. It's what Justin Wilcox is all about. It's what they've built their team around. When you look at their, recruiting list right now for the upcoming class, it's very heavily slanted towards the defense. People know what Cal is about. It's a defensive team. And so it's really interesting to kind of see, it'll be interesting to see this game and see how it plays out and who can maybe dictate the style a little bit, because Cal was really kind of able to dictate the style against Notre Dame. Obviously Notre Dame, I think we're all seeing, is not the team that, everyone thought they would be or expects to see at Notre Dame, but it is something to pay attention to, and that they were able to kind of dictate what they wanted in that game and, play to their strengths, which are, defense. So, Arizona is obviously, I think, coming around as a defensive team, and who knows if, they get years under their belt with Johnny Nanson, maybe they can, flip this thing and become more of a defensive team and thought of as a defensive team. But when your head coach is Jedd Fisch and he's kind of pulling the strings and calling the shots and the weapons they have offensively, you're going to be an offensive minded team. And so, Arizona really hasn't exploded offensively. So it'll be interesting to see if this is that game when they're able to kind of really hit that next level and really open up things offensively. Jacob Cowan has been a little bit quiet at times since having that huge opener. It'll be interesting to see if he kind of gets going a little bit more. But as you look at Arizona, look at this matchup, what are some things that maybe you're going to be paying attention to, having on your checklist of things they need to do well to earn a win this week?
Yeah, I think number one is get to the quarterback. Cal's offensive line has been one of the worst in the Pac-12. They've allowed 12 sacks in 3 games this season. That's a really high number. So I think Arizona's front seven, specifically to the defensive line, Hunter Echols, Jalen Harris, and even a guy like Keon Barnes, I think they're going to be able to apply pressure. So that's the number one thing I'm looking at is Arizona's defensive line versus Cal's offensive line. Number 2 is Tetairoa McMillan. He had that good game against San Diego State, had his struggles against Mississippi State, had a catch called back against North Dakota State. When is he going to have his breakout game? Could this be the game? I don't think he's been poor, but I don't think we've seen his true potential yet. And so I'm going to be looking at him. And then lastly, if this game comes down to a field goal kicking and all that, Arizona's been pretty good on special teams this season. Although they've only kicked 4 field goals and made 3, Can Tyler Loop overcome that one missed field goal against North Dakota State? Because he talked about, man, I don't want to think about missing a kick because he hadn't before, and I don't know how I'm going to take it when that moment happens. That moment's happened. So how is he going to be able to respond?
All very good points. So let's get into the predictions here now. I'll be there. So I'll be in Berkeley. As people are watching this, I'm probably on my way up there right now. So I'll be there for the game on Saturday afternoon. We are all thanking everybody above whoever made this decision to make it a 2:30 game because we like afternoon games. And so I'll be there. But as you look at, Cal, Arizona, Pac-12 play beginning, what do you see in this game and how do you see it playing out?
Jack Plummer, he's a good quarterback. I think an upgrade to what they had last season when Garbers went down. Jaden Ott, very good running back, very young, talented, and they have a good defense. But overall, their offense is a huge problem. I know they put up 17 points against Notre Dame, who's a good defensive team traditionally, but it's just not a very aspiring offense, and they've struggled against UNLV, and I forget the first game on the year for the Golden Bears, but I think there's just way too many offensive problems. I don't think their defense is going to be able to keep Arizona slowed down enough, and at the end of the day, I don't think this one's going to be close. I know the last 6 have been very close. I think it's going to be 38-17 Arizona, kind of a blowout. Maybe they'll get to 40. I just think too much offense on Arizona's end and not enough offense on the Golden Bears side.
How do you forget UC Davis, Troy? Come on.
There we go.
The vaunted Aggies, which gave Cal some trouble early on in the season. So,
it did. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's going to be higher scoring than what it's projected right now. I think that there's going to be some big plays by Arizona. I think they're going to get back to those explosive plays. Jaden Ott is a really tough matchup. He's a really good player. I think he's going to be able to kind of continue to have a strong freshman season and do some different things for Cal. I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than you for sure. I think I don't know. You see these patterns and I really think it's going to continue. So I think Arizona's gonna be able to dictate a lot of what, like they did last week and really kind of continue to make strides and take steps forward, especially offensively. I think they kind of found something, and going back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, what did they unlock? I think they unlocked something, and he kind of did it himself with Jaden Delore going, hey, there's an opening to run. It's 8 or 9 yards. That's a really good play for Arizona just to move the chains, and then you set up something bigger. So I think just getting that over that hurdle and getting that to click a little bit, I think is going to give them a boost offensively. I think it's going to, trip some teams up and really get them thinking about, okay, what are they going to do? And now you add that element to it and you're becoming a complete offense. I think you're still, not there yet. If you're Arizona, I think there's, like I mentioned, another level they can take to truly become, a top offense in this league. But it feels like the pieces are starting to fall in place, and Jedd Fisch is really can really start to look and not have to come up with crazy trick plays. He can kind of just pull those out when he needs them and really just stick to the offense and what they want to do and have it being executed well and, really move the chains and get the ball in the end zone, which is what they're, trying to do. And so I think they take another step forward in that way this week. I think the defense continues to take another step forward. I'm going to give Cal a little bit more credit than I think other people, definitely than you. I think their offense will come out and do some things, but I have Arizona winning this one 35-31. Arizona's not the favorite, so bucking the trend again and coming out with the win. That's what I think it's going to look like this week for Arizona and Cal. Any other last things, Troy, before we get out of here?
I think one of the things to look at too is, can Arizona turn over the football? They've been great at that. The first 3 games, I think, tied the season total from a year before. But Cal really doesn't turn over the ball. I think Jack Plummer, Jack Plummer has 2 interceptions on the season. So can Arizona get them into some trouble with their pressure? Maybe. I think they will. But can they continue that trend of turning over the football, creating turnovers?
There you go. Jack Plummer. No relation to Jake. Very much relation to Will. I wonder if there was any conversations this week. I know Jack was saying that they're not going to share any, government secrets with each other. But I wonder if there was any conversations. I'd be really interesting if Will was playing this week, and maybe Jedd will sneak them in there for a play. But that's kind of the other interesting element of this game. But these battles have been really fun to watch between Cal and Arizona. It's kind of one of those sneaky, like, fun games that I think if you're only if you're a fan of the two teams, you ever like really truly pay attention to these games. They're often, on very late at night. At least they have been in recent years. There's been some fun moments over the years with these two teams. There was one that I remember very, very clearly happened in the back of the end zone at Arizona. It was a great play by Austin Hill.
I was going to say, you think of the Hail Mary, and you mentioned Colin Schooler's swat, and then you also have the double pass by Nick Foles. I mean, there's so many like games. Antoine Caisson's pick six. There's a lot of memorable moments between these two teams, and it's not only recent, but dating back to the Dick Tomey era as well.
Yeah, and it's just one of those. Like I said, I think if you're a fan of either team, you remember those games. I know, perusing some of the Cal message boards and seeing some of the Cal stuff out there, they all kind of dread the Hail Mary and just like, oh man, how did that happen? What in the world was that play? But it was a fun time. I remember that game very clearly, very vividly. So hopefully, who cares? For us, we can say hopefully we get another game like that, because last week was fun. I mean, that was one of the things watching last week against North Dakota State. You're watching, you're like, whoa, this is not bad football. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were both playing pretty well. They're going back and forth and, trading touchdowns. And it wasn't because of poor defense or anything like that. It was just those teams were playing well. So hopefully we'll see that again this week, because it'd be great to have, start Pac-12 play with a fun football game. But like I said, I'll be there. We'll have all the coverage for you, as we always do, at GOAZCATS.com. And we appreciate you listening. We'll catch up with you guys next time.